With a truly terrible track record on environmental matters, both as an MP and sitting around the Thames-Coromandel Council, having voted against civil unions, the precursor to marriage equality, and now being a flip-flop anti-vax nut job, Sandra Goudie is our latest political candidate to really be concerned about when it comes to the next local body election, because while she makes the news for switching between what vaccines she's going to take, there's a lot more there that I think needs to be unpacked. So let's start with the basics here. Sandra Goudie is currently the mayor of the Thames-Coromandel district, which is a fairly large area and quite a diverse one when it comes to the local regional environment. She's a former MP. She sat on the National Party when Don Brash was leader of it, so talking early 2000s here. The day after she got elected to Parliament, she was actually part of a protest group that went down and chopped down nearly 2 rugby fields worth of native mangroves from one of the local estuaries. Now, mangroves are a divisive issue in the Coromandel area because some people see them as weeds because they grow like weeds, they grow everywhere. But from an environmental perspective, they grow really easily in areas that are filled with silt, and a lot of the estuaries in the area are also filled with silt due to deforestation issues that have happened in other parts of the peninsula. So her going down there and chopping them down, not ideal, but kind of a populist movement. At the same time, it was illegal. Those mangroves were protected under regional and national environmental acts at the time, and she knew full well what she was doing. However, she used the old Bill Clinton defense of "I didn't inhale." All she did apparently was stack things. She didn't actually chop anything down, and the party leader Don Brash at the time turned around and said, "This is a local issue," but not a great look for an MP who was literally elected the night before to represent the region. And this isn't her first time being on the wrong side of history when it comes to environmental issues. As Mayor of Thames-Coromandel, she's not only turned down protests for climate change that have been brought to her table, she's now currently refusing to sign the Declaration for Climate Change Action that's been put forward to all councils around the country. In fact, she's the singular holdout for a large chunk of the area, and the only person on her council that's not willing to sign it, leading to her being called autocratic by some of her co-councillors. In 2005, as an MP for the Coromandel electorate, she voted against the Civil Union Act, which was a precursor to the Marriage Equality Act, but didn't quite go so far as giving same-sex couples marriage equality, but giving them a legal framework that was recognised as the relationship in the eyes of the law. It was a bit of an iffy time, to be honest, and didn't really go far enough, and Sandra decided to vote against that. Now, this was a conscience vote, so she didn't have to give a reason for it, but it was entirely her choice. In an ironic twist, though, the very first civil union that took place in Parliament was actually between her assistant and her assistant's partner at the time. Most prominently, though, Goudie has been in the news recently because of her flip-flopping over vaccines. Now, everybody has the right to choose whether or not they take a vaccine. Whether you do or don't is entirely up to you, and she chose to sit out the Pfizer vaccine rollout in favour for the Novavax vaccine. So for those of you that don't know, Novavax use a slightly different method of creating their vaccine. They use a protein that's created from a different source instead of an mRNA vaccine. It's all sort of complicated and sciencey, and one of the big catch cries of the people who were involved in the anti-vax movements when it first started was that they wanted to wait for the Novavax vaccine because they didn't trust an mRNA vaccine. Entirely their choice. But when the Novavax vaccine was signed off here, she turned around again and says, no, still not getting it. And to be fair, I kind of understand that because Novavax has never once in its 20-year history actually brought a working vaccine to the market. But Pfizer has, many times over. Because of her refusal to take this vaccine, she can't even attend council meetings that she's elected to. She can't go into facilities that the council run. She can't do most of the things that she needs to be able to do in her position as mayor. And I totally get it is her choice, and I'm not saying that that is a bad thing. But as a leader in a community, as somebody who people take inspiration from and look to for guidance, to turn around and say, no, I'm not taking this vaccine, I'm waiting for that one, and then flip-flopping because she was never going to take a vaccine, is a really bad look. If she was consistent across the board and said this is why she's not doing it, absolutely something that people would probably be able to get behind and understand. But she's been defensive along the entire process, refusing to answer questions about her choices, refusing to back them up, simply going out there and saying, "This is the choice that I'm making, deal with it." And that sort of entitled attitude is a really bad one to have when you're in an elected position, especially when you are the head of a council table. You've got to work in the best interest for your entire electorate, and she's not doing that. Even though she voted to accept things like vaccine passes in these areas, she herself refuses to do it. And what kind of elected representative goes out of their way to make sure that they can't partake in the functions and the infrastructure and everything else that comes with the region that they're there to support and to promote and to improve? And that's your biggest risk here with Sandra Goudie. It's really easy for her to turn around and say, "I'm doing this for personal choice," but her personal choices have led to a point where she can't even take part in the functions she needs to take as mayor of this region. That is not an ideal position for anybody who's in elected spots, but it also goes to show that yet again, her judgment calls are not the greatest. She has a long history of making judgment calls that aren't in the best interest of people, that aren't long-term thinking, and really kind of selfish. That's who you've got running for the mayor of Thames-Coromandel this year. Again, maybe it's time to rethink who's sitting out there, who's standing out there, and who's going to be running out there. Alright, that's all for this week. I will catch you all next time. Ka kite anō.